Here are the moments I think you should know about from episode 36 of Beyond the Gates. Dani and Andre spend the night together. I wasn't quite sure of the timeline. They spend a significant amount of time together, however, because Dani was drunk off her ass and Andre has to take care of her. And I hope they didn't have sex because consent be damned. Weird. You can't give consent while you're wasted, even though you called him over before you were drunk. Anyway, they have a pretty lengthy conversation and he is trying to remind her that she is the Dani Dupree and she can do whatever she wants to do. And the setbacks, whether it's her marriage, her daughter, her great niece who doesn't want her to be a model or doesn't want her to be her manager, or being fired from the charity board, is not a reflection of her and the great things she can accomplish. She and Andre go back and forth and they spar, and it's just like, I would die if my aunt was sleeping with my first cousin on my father's side. And they're just like going back and forth like they are almost in a relationship. Anyway, y'all know how I feel about this, but I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't like them together. I see all the comments. I think I'm in the minority here. I see all the comments on Twitter and Facebook, and people are like, yeah, Dani, get her groove back. Get her groove back with some other young man, not Andre. Anyway, they leave. She calls her friend Pamela, thanks Nelly, and they decide to go to the country club, and she runs into Haley. And Dani, even though she pretended like she didn't know what was going on, she did have all the wait staff not wait on Haley, because at the drop of a hat, she called over Shiloh, very cute young man. She called over Shiloh and said, Mrs. Hamilton needs to be waited on. And what did he do? He waited on her. And then at the end of that scene with Pamela and Dani, Pamela is there to boost up her girlfriend. I think she called it Operation Gemstone to make Dani shine again. Bill comes over and thanks Dani for making the wait staff wait on Haley. Now, speaking of Bill, he did something really big today. He fired Mike from the firm, which rightfully so. I mean, get this guy out of here. They go back and forth, and Mike, again, is bringing up, I bring in so much for this firm, and it's your fault that we were involved in this lawsuit because your daughter wanted to get back at you and she dragged me into this. Now, we know that is sort of the case, but Mike did this all by himself. And he even almost calls Naomi a bitch before Mike pulls him up. And, you know, he's a little guy. He's probably shorter than I am, which I'm not that tall. I'll keep you guessing, though. But yeah, fires him, and that is done and over with. And then he goes and has dinner with Haley, who has been waited on at the country club. Now, I mentioned Naomi. She and Jacob spent the majority of their time in bed, and I saw some people complaining about the ad that was ran in the soap opera. The soap opera. I will tell you, if a certain company wants to send me any products, I will put them right here and right here. So you send me the products. I will put the laundry detergent right here. I will put it up here, and I will put the air freshener right here. Guys, it's a soap opera. That's how they get money. They have ads, and that's how historically they were made. On the radio, actually, soap operas. It was sponsored by a soap brand, and then it was like a telenovela or an opera, but made for radio. Anyway, their scenes were more than just an ad. Naomi was talking to Jacob about how she feels withdrawing from the case and how she doesn't want her mom to think she's on her dad's side. And that's pretty much what the scene was, back and forth, how she wants to be her father's child because she realizes he's not going to be around for the next 50 years. Like, he could pass away in 10 years, maybe even sooner, because of his weird heart attack symptoms. So that's what her and Jacob talked about in bed. Now, I did mention Andre. He ended up going over to Ted and Nicole's, and this is why the timeline in my head is like messed up because, well, I guess he didn't spend the night with Dani, even though they kind of made it seem like that, because he got over to Ted and Nicole's right after they were finished with Kat's birthday party. And he wanted to talk about some pictures, but of course, Ted is like, why is he coming over here so late? I don't want him over here. And Nicole's like, Ted, like, you always want your nephew over here. So he's asking them questions, and he's talking about their love and how it's great. Now, mind you, he knows his uncle cheated on Nicole and that she doesn't know this. So we think, But in the middle of it, she says, no, you can't include that. Like, our love hasn't always been rock solid. Again, she brings up how whenever she was going through miscarriages, she walled herself off, and pretty much Ted was just there to inseminate and then get out because she wanted to have a baby so bad. And whenever that didn't happen, she blames it on him. So we're getting some insight into like what happened and, you know, why Ted went outside of his relationship and slept with Dana. Now, I'm not justifying it, but that is the reason. But in that, you know, she's blaming herself, and Ted jumps up and says, you know, you can't do that. It was my fault as well, and we both share equal blame. And he got really upset. And so they talked about it. Andre said, I'm sorry for bringing this up. Nicole says, I'm going to go upstairs. She goes upstairs, and Andre's like, I felt like you were about to admit something, like you were about to tell the truth, which again, he should have never told his nephew he cheated. Go talk to a therapist, a counselor, not your nephew. Again, I think not again, I haven't brought this up, but I think, I don't want to say the sleeper scene, but there's always like a sleeper, you know, arc in every episode. And I think it was the whole Martin and Smitty. So Martin comes in, he's not answering Smitty's calls, but he comes in, he spoke to the principal of the school, and she thanked him for bringing it to her attention that his son, Tyrell, was being cyberbullied. Now, something interesting in all this, you know, he's like telling Smitty, it's okay you weren't there. Like, I'm telling you everything. Like, I just had to go out and do this. And I'm doing this not just for our son, but for other kids. And he brought up something interesting that I've seen in my line of work. A lot of the rules around cyberbullying and the internet are very archaic. Like, they were passed in 1994 whenever people still had telephones on their walls and they were connecting to the internet through a telephone connection. So he brought that up about how a lot of those rules are ancient. And I think that is a real world problem that should be addressed by our politicians. But clearly, you know what they're up to these days. They do not care about those types of issues. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I will be back here tomorrow to give you the recap and my thoughts on episode 37 of Beyond the Gates. But until then, I'll see you around.